pull up at your friend's yard and you can get them out of the trailer and they tie up on the side and they're fine with being tied up. You can pop the tack on and they're nuzzling you and they're not overwhelmed by the environment that you've put them in, and that you can pop on and go for a hack and maybe have a canter side by side and not freak out that your horse is either too strong or spooking or worrying about whatever's going to happen. Those horses I think it's a real misconception that we feel like the ones that have those horses are really lucky to have them. And it's not true. Like, those horses can be created, and they are, and they can be helped to, your horse sitting at home can be that horse. You become your horse's teacher and their mentor and their helper, rather than, just hoping for the best. And hacking can be like an extreme sport sometimes in this country. We have to cope with so much, and I suppose giving yourself permission to only go as far as a certain point.
In today's episode, we're joined by Hannah Walton, a horse development specialist and event rider in Oxfordshire, who blends natural horsemanship with classical disciplines. She's worked with renowned names like Monty Roberts and Pat and Linda Pirelli. She was a 2-star Pirelli professional. She's developed her own methods by integrating her experience in horse training with eventing principles. You're listening to the Curious Equestrian podcast, produced by Horsemanship Journal magazine and hosted by me, Anna Louise. Through this podcast, we delve into the enigmatic world of horses, approaching every interaction with empathy and a sense of wonder. We bring together trainers, behaviourists and horse owners, each sharing personal stories that deepen our connection. It's about exploring the reasons behind every behaviour, not just finding solutions. We believe true horsemanship is rooted in curiosity, in asking why. Why do our equine partners act the way they do? So join us as we traverse the depths of equine behaviour and psychology, where curiosity leads the way and every horse has a tale to tell. This is the Curious Equestrian. Welcome to the podcast, Hannah.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Hannah, take us back. When did your journey into the world of natural horsemanship and eventing begin?
Oh, wow. As a kid, basically, I was horse mad, and I always wanted to event. I wanted to event as long as I could remember, and I used to describe it that I've gone on this 20-year detour into horsemanship and sort of out of eventing, and my journey has kind of gone on this wiggly road outside of eventing, because I wasn't from a horsey family. Horses just weren't a part of my kind of upbringing, so I sort of begged, borrowed, stole a ride on any horse that I could get my hands on, and those horses happened to be, as they often are, the horses that not many other people wanted to ride. So I sort of had to learn to stay on and sit calmly and wait and help gain the horse's trust, and actually because of that I ended up with horses that really weren't that sound in mind, although they were pretty sound in body. And when I finally got a horse of my own, I was about 14 when I got my first horse. And she was an X-race horse, and she had a bolting problem. She was straight off the track, and I had all these dreams and goals to event, and kind of started all the work, and it just, she really wasn't ready. And for me, it's always been really important that I do it. Everything I do, it really has to be that I feel like the horse wants to do it as much as I want to do it. I don't want to get things done despite the horse. And so even back then as a kid, I just remember feeling like, okay, I do still want to event, and I love eventing, and I want to go cross country and feel that buzz of galloping across fields and mud in your face and just wind and jumps. And anyone who wants to event does it for the cross country. They don't do it for the dressage or the discipline of the show jumping. So I decided, well, I will do that with this horse, but it will be when the horse is ready. And so that actually started this 20-year detour into horsemanship, and took me on a path that has meant that, as you say in the intro, I've been able to train with people like Monty and go and live and work with Pat and Linda Pirelli, and I was a Pirelli instructor over 10 years ago now, but I learned a lot from them and the program. And it's really, horsemanship it's opened so many doors for me, and enabled me to work with so many amazing people all over the world and train thousands of horses now. And that's why I've got a career in it, because of that one horse and that one decision to not event, actually, despite that being my ultimate goal. And so, for the last, now I'm sort of heading nearer to my 40s. I'm back and I'm feeling like I can marry the two together. And I have been kind of on that journey for the last 5 years, just figuring out a way to run a business in horsemanship at the same time as compete in eventing, and map together those two big goals, and still with the same ultimate thing of doing it for the horse and sort of with the horse. So that's a bit of a roundabout way of answering your question.
No, it's perfectly answered my question. And how did working with the likes of the Pirellis and Monty Roberts shape your own horsemanship methods?
I remember the first day I was having classical dressage lessons with an Alexander Technique teacher, who was a beautiful rider, on this bolting horse. And we'd got quite a long way with this horse, and I'd done a fair bit of kind of my own way of groundwork with her, and she would join up with me and she would follow me. And, I was 14, so I didn't really know anything. And it got to the point where we thought we were getting on quite well, and the instructor, my mum, came to watch the lesson, and I really remember it, because the instructor said, yeah, this is the day we're going to canter the horse and it's going to be okay, and then she's going to start to do poles and we're going to go on this, she's going to be back towards her eventing goals. And she said, don't worry, if the horse gets tense, I'll just whistle and she'll slow down. And so we popped her up to canter, and she started whistling, and she was still whistling while I was doing the wall of death around the arena and just clinging on, and the poor horse was just motorbiking round and round around the arena. And she said, this is great and I can take you a long way, but I haven't got the strategies you need to be able to help this horse mentally be able to do what she needs to do to be able to find calm and relaxation in her mindset. But I do know a few people who might be able to help you. There's this demo, and at the time, Pirelli wasn't that big in the UK, and there was a demo that was happening at a little arena kind of close by. And so she sent me off to this demo, and I remember watching, like it was the time where Pirelli, Pat and Linda came over, and they had all of their top instructors, and there wasn't that many in the UK at the time. So I watched people like Dave Stewart and Inga Larsson at the time, and Charlotte Dennis and Silke Valentine, and there was a number of people. There was even a Zorse in this demo, and it was just a really beautiful, for me in my mind at the time, it was a beautiful example of what I had never even dreamed was possible with horses. And then on watching that, decided, yeah, like this is what I want to do. I want to not necessarily go straight to college. Maybe we'll go to Union College later, which I did end up doing. But at the time, I wanted to take, after A-levels, take a bit of time out, study Pirelli, go and train and work with them if I could get the chance to, and kind of pursue that. And I decided then and there, that's what I want to do with my life. I want to kind of go and be as good. I want to go and be as good as I possibly can with horses. And that for me at that time was they were the only people doing it that I knew of. So I'm like, right, well, I'm going to go and learn from them. And then the rest is kind of history. I went out, well, actually, I was a working student for Inga for a while in the UK, and then I was very fortunate in that I was able to go and work directly for Dave Stewart and Charlotte Dennis for a good few months in the UK too. Pirelli at the time, this was way back sort of, well, I qualified in 2009, so it was really a long time ago. But at the time, Pirelli were trying to sort of break into the UK with something called equinethology. So I was part of the centre that they had there in Hope, in sort of just on the edge of Wales, and was even able to go out to France and see some beautiful horsemanship out there. So all of it was just amazing. All of it was really kind of just immersing myself in this amazing experience. And later, then I ended up going out to the States and training directly with Pat and Linda and qualifying after that. And I still really credit them for what they've done. Without the education that I got from the Pirelli program, and really the inspiration that I got from Linda as a teacher. I think she's a brilliant communicator and a fantastic teacher, and Pat, I think, is an incredible horseman. I really wouldn't be where I am today without them. And I think what they did at the time, and what they still have is, or I know it's different now, but what they did at the time was created a program that enabled really pretty kind of average people to be exceptionally good with horses. And there was nothing like it. It was sort of the first of its kind. And now there's a lot of systems out there and a lot of online training programs. And, lockdown changed a lot of that. But they really were trailblazers in the field. So I give a lot of credit to them for where I am now.
Your focus on hacking, Hannah, is very unique, focusing on the horse's mindset and making sure that the horse is ready. And I'm wondering why that mindset for the horse is so important for a successful hacking experience.
Mindset for the horse is one of the most critical parts of everything that I do with horses. For me, it's as important to train the mind as it is to train the body. I think sometimes in more natural horsemanship fields, we focus a lot on the mind and not so much on the body, and the body gets sacrificed. And then maybe sometimes in a stereotypical traditional sense, we might focus too much on the body and not necessarily enough on the mind. So what I really try and do in the program that I have created and in the work, because I've got a training barn, we have 14 stables here. So we start horses, we restart horses, often horses with really extreme behavioural challenges, and babies that come in for starting, and then we teach clinics and things like that here. So we get to see a huge range of horses through the barn year on year. And what we see is that if the horses are not connected to themselves and to their human, and they haven't got the ability and the education that enables them to understand the aids and understand the way that the human is communicating with them and understand how to respond appropriately to pressure and environmental stimulus, they just don't have an education to fall back on. So you're dealing with a prey animal that is either reacting in freeze or in flight, or sometimes in fight if they don't understand. So for me, it's just it doesn't make any sense not to focus on the mind. It is such an important and a massive part of my training. It's kind of, for me, you wouldn't train the horse if you didn't also train their mind.
And I love that you focus on hacking, harking back to your first experience with your first horse in that experience where you're bolting and so we all can have those, we've all got those memories and experiences of people saying, oh, don't worry if they bolt, because you can either hang on, you have had so many people screaming, cling on, hang on, when I was a child. For you, that whistling noise, oh, don't worry, they'll come back. But actually it's important that we're all feeling comfortable and that we can all feel that sense of control when we're hacking, including the horse.
Yeah. I mean, hacking for me is a really good example of a task that a horse with a good foundation should be able to do easily. And what I basically am doing day in, day out is teaching horses and helping riders to understand how to give their horse a good foundation, and teaching and re-educating horses in the gaps that might be that might appear in their foundation. So hacking, it's actually, in order to create a horse with a good foundation, the dream is that you create the perfect all-rounder. And the perfect all-rounder is a horse that you can put in a box like it's a taxi and they don't worry about it, that you can pull up at your friend's yard and you can get them out of the trailer and they tie up on the side and they're fine with being tied up, that you can pop the tack on and they're nuzzling you and they're not overwhelmed by the environment that you've put them in, and that you can pop on and go for a hack and maybe have a canter side by side and not freak out that your horse is either too strong or spooking or worrying about whatever's going to happen. Those horses, we sort of, I think it's a real misconception that we feel like the ones that have those horses are really lucky to have them. And it's not true. Like, those horses can be created, and they are, and they can be helped to, your horse sitting at home can be that horse. It's just they don't have the education yet to help them to get there. So what I do is look at a horse and look at, you've got, you're a bit worried about noise, maybe you're a bit spooky. Well, it's not about, I'm going to expose you to every single spooky thing on the planet. It's, if you're worried about noise, well, how can I help you get more okay with noise? How can I put you in a simulated environment where I ask you to accept noise and then release the pressure, so take the noise away when you show either confidence, curiosity, or relaxation. So you're doing this whole kind of re-education process. You become your horse's teacher and their mentor and their helper, rather than just hoping for the best. And hacking can be like an extreme sport sometimes in this country. We have to cope with so much, and it's terrifying. If I wouldn't want to go out on a horse with that. The bolting experience for me, that was the catalyst for, this horse doesn't know anything, and I thought I could just get on her at an event. Like, there is chasms of a lack of understanding in this horse's education. How can I create a situation where I can help her think that it doesn't mean bolt when she gets tense or tight, that actually it means find relaxation and find a kind of way of managing her emotions that doesn't kind of result in freeze or flight or fight. And that's really, that's really what I'm doing day in, day out with any of the horses that are in the barn. And hacking is just such a lovely example, because it's a really good way of putting all of the things that you need in a horse's foundation to purpose.
Start your year with a spring experience you'll never forget. This March 22nd to 23rd, 2024, step into the enchanting Scottish borders for a retreat that's as transformative as it is unique. Embark on a journey of self-discovery with group personal coaching led by Helen O'Hanlon, a master of personal growth. Explore the nuanced world of equine behaviour in peer-supported, equine-assisted sessions with Lindsay Crosby. This retreat is more than a learning opportunity. It's a comprehensive experience that deepens connections with horses and like-minded individuals in an invigorating and serene setting. Visualise yourself enjoying homemade meals prepared with the freshest local ingredients, unwinding in the peaceful embrace of Whizgill's house, and rejuvenating with a tranquil back massage. With only 10 spots available, this intimate and enriching experience is an exceptional opportunity. Spaces are quickly being claimed, so act now. Visit unbridledconnection.co.uk to secure your place in this exclusive retreat. How, talking of those instincts, those reactions, freezing and fighting and bolting, how do you balance those natural instincts and those responses with the challenges as well that the horses do face out hacking?
Yeah, I mean, when I think about hacking, I think about sort of a few different things, but one of the things is about the preparation. So one's the preparation for the hack, and then the second is the sort of the setup. The preparation for me is about horse development, and the setup is about sort of our human responsibilities for the things that we might need to consider to set ourselves and our horse up for success. So if I talk about them first, and then maybe I talk about the preparation second. In terms of the setup, what I would think about from a horse's, from a sort of a planning perspective, is I wouldn't necessarily, just because you like a person on your yard doesn't mean they're the best person to hack with. I wouldn't necessarily choose to go out hacking with the person that's renowned on my yard for just cantering off and leaving everyone, because no matter how good your horse's education, there's still like setting them up for failure and being a good friend and putting them in a situation where you just both are going to be, you know, the herd instinct is potentially apt to kick in at that point, and it's it's not going to be fun for either of you. So I think about stuff like that. I think about like, who am I going hacking with? Are they considerate of the fact that maybe I've got a young horse, or maybe that I just need to go on a walk program for 6 months, or that we're not going to trot or canter towards home, or that actually I want to do a little serpentine because my horse has got a bit tight. Are they going to be okay with that? And if they are, great. Like when we do our hacking camps, we really kind of we plan carefully who goes with who, and the sort of group that we get together. And you don't leave horses behind. You stay together as a herd and you work with each other. And whoever is the lowest in confidence, whether it's horse or rider, you work with them so that it's a confidence building experience. Because really, you want to think about it as a rider that whatever you do today, you're going to reap the rewards or pay for tomorrow. And so what I mean by that is, if you canter towards home on a grassy track because it looks really nice today, then tomorrow don't be surprised if your horse gets a bit joggy on that track on the way home. Or if actually you and your friend get all excited and you want to kind of whiz around, then don't be surprised if your horse starts to get a little bit tense in company. So it's like you want to really think about, like, how can you set it up for success so that you get out of it the sort of horse that and hack that you want to. And even to the extent of the time that I go, like, I'm going to set my horse up for success with, if I have to go on roads, I'm going to be careful about the time of day. So I'll plan it that it's not rush hour or school drop off, or if it's a really windy day and everyone on the yard has decided that they want to hack and my horse is a little bit tense in wind, or is apt to sort of change when the environment changes, I might decide, hey, actually it's not the best day for it. I'm going to do something else with my horse to help them get more okay in that situation, so that then the next time a windy day happens, I can pretty much say my horse is going to be okay with it. Which is basically this sort of it kind of leads on quite nicely to the next bit, which is all about the preparation. So if we think about hacking as I like to think about hacking as a big exam or a big set of challenges for your horse. And if you were to break down that hack or your regular hack into a series of kind of can you challenges, can you safely say, are you 95% sure that your horse is going to be okay, and actually not just okay but ace every single, if it was an exam, are they going to ace every single element in that exam? And if they're not, if it's wheelie bin day and that usually causes your horse to be a bit spooky, then what can you do in the arena to help prep them for it, so that the next time you go out, you're like, yeah, my horse has got this. I know if we meet a wheelie bin, or if we meet, pheasant, pheasant flying out of a bush, or a plastic bag, or a cyclist, or, which all of it can be boiled down to, is my horse okay with movement? Is my horse okay with noise? Is my horse okay with tight squeezes? Is my horse okay with things touching their side? Is my horse okay to stop and stand still and wait? And it's just really thinking about it sort of from the horse's perspective. Like, if you have a horse that you lead in from the field and they are tense and walking really fast and walking ahead of you, and they don't want to stand still, then that horse is probably going to be just like that when you go out hacking. And if their adrenaline comes up, then that's the sort of behaviour you're likely to see. So I do a lot of groundwork to help prepare the horses, and then a lot of work in the arena, and then in the saddle, and then around the property, and then expanding the arena gradually to help the horses to be as set up for success for going out on a hack as possible, so that they can ace the exam.
And that's so interesting, because I've heard so many, on so many occasions, heard horsey contacts, that have either been at the same livery yard in the past, or, in the same area, kind of say, you've just got to go and get out there. Do you find that a lot? People just thinking, I've just got to be brave, and I've just got to get on and leave the gates and, leave the yard behind me and see how we get on?
Yeah. And if you think about it, it's like, I've just got to get okay with spiders, so I'm just going to have one put in my hand every single day, and I'm probably going to end up hating them even more on day 7 than I did on day 1.
How do
So
you
it's like,
know, Hannah, when a horse is ready? When do you make that decision and go, okay, this horse is ready for those challenges to be thrown at it?
when they can tackle the challenges with confidence, with relaxation, and in a connected way.
And is
And
it
you really get
more
that.
difficult? Sorry, Hannah, you say.
That's okay. You really get that as a feeling from them. Like, we all know what it feels like to have a horse that feels really relaxed and really confident and really just happy to be doing what you're doing. And so what I would do is set up simulations in a space that the horse feels safe. So it might be the arena, it might be the field, it might be in and out of the field if you're working on the ground. And I would set up little can you challenges, and if the horse is okay with that, then I would then go, okay, now can we up it a little bit? It's a bit like if you are a jumper, you will be wanting, say if you're going out and competing at 90, you're probably jumping at home at sort of 95, 100. But with hacking, we just assume, like, oh, I should be able to do this, it's only hacking. And actually, it's a lot harder in a lot of ways because there's so many variables that are out of our control. We've got roads, we've got changing weather, we've got light to dark, we've got mud, we've got hard ground, we've got woods, we've got branches, and we just don't think about that as something that we need to prepare our horses for. But if we thought about it as much as a discipline like jumping or like dressage, then actually we would break down all of those different things into little exercises. And things like the track are pretty good for it. There's a lot more horsemanship type clinics and things like that that are happening now that do help prepare horses more for things like hacking. But there's also, we've talked a lot about the sort of physical things that you might meet out hacking, but then there's also the question of, well, how do I release tension in my horse when they get tight? So a lot of the time people ask me, well, what do I do if it goes wrong? Because sometimes you can't do anything because you're on a road or you're on a really tight bridleway, or you feel that tension in your horse and you're not able to do anything. So there's sort of two types of situation that you might have when you're out hacking. And one of those situations is, I call them a let me help you situation or a sticking plaster situation. So in a sticking plaster situation, it's a bit like you're on a road or you're in a tight bridleway. You're kind of in a situation where you can't really help your horse. You can't really bend them. You can't really move them. You can't really do that much because there are too many other variables that are out of your control, or the space doesn't necessarily allow you to do it. So you have to have enough education and enough communication with the horse that you're able to just keep you and them safe. It might not be a place that you help them get more relaxed. It might be you just stay at that volume or at that level until you get to a space where you've got a bit more room, and then you're able to help release tension. But first, in order to help the horse release tension, they have to already have some strategies in place so that they understand how to release tension. And the time and the place to teach them that is not in live fire when you're out on the hack. It's at home in the arena, first of all on the ground, and then in the saddle. And then it might be that you go, we do something called arena expansion here a lot, where in the arena, you will do a series of exercises on the ground to help the horse release tension in their body, whether it's in their shoulders, their ribs, or their hindquarters, or the head, neck, and poll. You'll do that on the ground, and then you go and do that in the saddle. And then you go, okay, we can go from the arena to a little paddock that we've got. And just by the act of going out of the arena gate into the paddock onto grass, some horses are already a bit lit up. So then the rider gets to feel, oh, okay, I can't do anything about this now because I'm in my sticking plaster situation. I've got to go from my arena gate to my next gate and into my paddock. So there's that feeling. It's a double-edged sword, isn't it? Because there's the feeling in us where we're like, oh, my horse isn't okay, right? I need to start micromanaging. Now it's going really wrong. And that's the moment we sort of have to breathe. And there's inner work to be done for us too, because it's not just our horses who are. It's very normal and very okay if you've had a horse that is tense or has demonstrated undesirable behavior, that your body and your brain is telling you this is not safe, this is a bad situation, I need to start micromanaging and I need to start doing things to stop this escalating. But sometimes in that situation, actually what you need to do is stay with the horse, stay with your breath, not do too much too soon, just wait, get yourself to the space if you can where you're able to do something, and then when we go into the paddock, then we go, okay, now we release tension. Maybe you can do that from on top, maybe you have to get off and you do that from the ground, and then you get the horse back to a calm, relaxed state of mind, and then you go, oh, maybe you go back to the arena and you practice that little back and forth from the paddock to the arena a few times until you feel like you don't have the sticking plaster going from the arena into the paddock. And then gradually, you might expand your arena. So the arena only feels safe because you practice strategies in there to help you and your horse feel safe. So you start to associate, and so does your horse, the feeling of being in that space with a feeling of relaxation, a feeling of being able to release tension, a feeling of being in control of your emotions. So what you want to do is replicate, I want that feeling that I can get in the arena, but I want that in multiple different places. And when I can start to get that in multiple different places, then I can start to play with it on the hack. So we've got a hack path around the property that we use for the hacking camps. And we might go from the arena to one of the fields to then the hack path. And there's a bit on the hack path that it's quite narrow, and there's some lorries that quite often go past. So you get the feeling of what it would be like to be on a road, and the horses always get a bit, they feel it, and the riders always feel it a bit. So we walk it first. And then we come out into an open space. The riders release the tension in the horses start to relax. And it's the more you practice, hey, horse, I can help you feel good because when you get tight, I can help you release that tension and give you a different strategy that isn't getting tight and isn't getting into freeze or fight or flight. It's, hey, how about you find relaxation instead in your body and in your posture and then in your mind? So the horse not only starts to feel good around you, but they also start to feel like you're making good decisions for them. So they start to trust your decision-making process more. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. And it also sounds like, Hannah, you have to do as much work on the mental state of the human, of the owner, and their confidence, as much as you do with the horses to make sure they're ready for going out and for unexpected occurrences. I mean, how do we prepare, Hannah, for those moments where a pheasant might come out of the bush, or someone might have the dog off of a lead and the dog chases us on our horse, or those moments that you can't recreate in an arena or even try to recreate in any space?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit, you can practice. What you might not be able to do is practice the exact, like, because there's, like you listed loads, there's so many scenarios that can happen when you're out, and that's why hacking's so great in a lot of ways, because there's so many variables. But what you can do is you can practice pressured situations. So you can practice situations in an arena, and you wouldn't do this at the beginning. First you'd practice, hey, I want to help you and your horse be able to get calm and relaxed without any pressure. And then once those strategies, once you feel like, yeah, I've got this, my horse is calm, my horse is relaxed, now can you practice those strategies when somebody is doing something a bit weird with a flag? Can you practice them while someone's driving past in a little digger or a little arena, harrying the arena?
Those little children's cars. They're absolutely lethal. A toddler in one of those little push-along cars.
Exactly, right?
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, yes,
And then
near-death experience.
you can say to your like whoever you've got, kind of, if it's possible to, I would set it up in a simulated way. So it might be like, hey, my horse, we had a horse here who was going to Horse of the Year show, and he was not okay with crowds making loud noises. When the crowd stood up and clapped, he found it really difficult. And he was also not okay with umbrellas, and he wasn't okay with buggies. So really what that translates is he's not okay with movement and he's not okay with noise, especially when he feels a little bit tense anyway. So he's slightly out of his comfort zone. So then what we can do is simulate, okay, you need to be able to find calm and relaxation when noise happens. So we might do and when movement happens. So you might separate out those two things. So you might move with a flag or a plastic bag until the horse starts to get calm and relaxed, and then the person with the flag or the plastic bag might stop when the horse is calm and relaxed. And it's not enough that you cause the horse to get tight and tense. It's not meant to be a I'm going to scare you until you're, until you learn that this isn't the right way. It shouldn't be like that ever. It should be, there's a little bit of pressure. What volume does the pressure have to get to in order to cause the horse to start to feel not okay, and start to feel slightly tense or slightly disconnected? And it shouldn't go higher than that, so that the person on the ground with the horse, or the person in the saddle, gets to help the horse in that situation. You don't want the horse to get so far into the red, so far out of their comfort zone, like we wouldn't want us to, that they're not able to learn. So what I try and do whenever I'm training the horses is, like, if there's ever an instance where the horse starts to feel under pressure, or like they're struggling with something, their adrenaline comes up, they start to feel less relaxed, they start to demonstrate behavior that is associated with tension. So they might get a little bit high-headed, their heart rate might go up a little bit, their facial expression might change, they might get a little wrinkle underneath their eye, their nose might change. Like, it's really important that you listen and you watch for all of those tiny signs, because they're the signs that really are telling you when your horse is getting disconnected or tense. And what we find a lot on the hacking camps is people don't necessarily notice those signs. And so a big revelation for a lot of people has been that if they start to make a little bit more effort to stay really connected to their horse, because when you hack, it's really easy when things start going well to just tune out and start chatting to your mate, or looking at the countryside, or going, oh, well, lucky me, I'm hacking on my horse, wow, until it's not okay. And then you're like, oh my God, you spooked out of nowhere, and it wasn't fine until now, and it's not fine now. And actually, what a lot of the time what happens is your horse has been kind of going, hey, I'm not actually that okay. And they're getting this trigger stacking effect, and getting to the point where they're so far out of their comfort zone that actually then they're almost in the red, and then it's difficult to get them back. I think Warwick Schiller tells a great story about this. It's called trigger stacking, and he describes it like I probably won't tell the story very well, but he basically says there's a guy going along a path, and their horse was always been fine with rabbits. And the horse sees the first rabbit and is completely fine with the rabbit, and then sees the second rabbit and has a little look, and third rabbit, a little bit more of a look. And by the seventh rabbit, the horse is really tight, tense, and bolting off home. So the guy's like, what is the problem? My horse has always been fine with rabbits. Why all of a sudden now has he got a problem with rabbits? And so we use this, thanks Warwick, a lot for our hacking clinics, because we don't often notice as riders until our horse is like in the warren, they're at rabbit number 7, and we're like, they're covered in rabbits, now what do I do about it? You say your job as a rider is to notice rabbits 1 to 3, because then your horse starts to go, oh, thank God, they're really aware, and they listen to my body language, and I can tell them when I'm not okay, and they help me feel better. But 2, you're able to have a conversation that doesn't have to be in this kind of escalated volume, because the horse isn't then shouting that it's not okay. So you're constantly emptying. If the horse has got a capacity for 4 rabbits, you're constantly emptying the cup, rather than dealing with them at rabbit number 7 or 8 when it's a bit of a bigger problem.
It's really interesting, isn't it, that this is an issue that you're sort of facing at the moment in terms of teaching people to tune in and to zone into their horse, because I think in so many aspects of life and society we're zoning out, aren't we? We're looking at our phones, we're going to dinner, and people don't really have conversations anymore. You often see people sat around all looking at their phones, or sort of staring into space. Actually, it's about having that conversation with our horses, and forgetting all the external distractions and zoning in for once. It seems in a society that we're not used to doing that anymore.
Yeah. It's really interesting. We often get on some of the camps, we get people to do meditations and just breath work to just really ground themselves. And quite often we'll do an exercise where, because in the barn we have a lot of horses who come in with serious behavioural challenges. So these are horses that have been through lots of different trainers, and we're sort of last chance saloon really for a lot of these horses. So energy in the space is really important, because, as you know, horses are energetic animals. They are masters of synchronization. They feel an energetic change miles away. It's crazy. We've got one big field where we had, in the summer, we had a herd of young horses out there, and then we had some horses in the barn, and the barn is a brick built barn which can be closed up. The horses in the barn can't see the horses in the field. And one morning, we've got an RAF base quite close, and sometimes they use it for parachuting. So one morning, a parachuter landed in the baby's field, and I only knew about it because the horses in the barn started calling for the horses in the field. And the horses, they couldn't see each other. The horses in the field weren't calling. They were actually, to be fair, quite curious about it. They had a little run, and then they looked, and they were like, why is this guy walking through our field? But actually it was the horses in the barn. We checked all the cameras in the barn. We're like, wow, like they knew that they weren't okay, just by, it's just an energetic exchange. So if they can feel that, then we get in and on with all our nerves, all our busyness, and all our, I should be at this stage with my horse, and now I haven't got enough time, and life's hard, and now this is happening, and my job sucks, or home's not okay, and my child is not doing what I want them to do. And then there's no room for just being in the moment. And I think that is one of the best things our horses can teach us, just to take a breath and just to feel, rather than think our way through all the things that we should be doing, or maybe all the questions in our mind. If we just sit and just feel them, then really you can get a long way just on that. There's a really interesting study, and I can't remember who did it, but it was about fear in people and when the horses felt it. And in this study, they got riders to ride past an umbrella, and they told a person standing with an umbrella, and they told the people, at this point, the person is going to put up the umbrella. And every single time the horse spooked at the umbrella, because the person's heart rate came up, even when the umbrella didn't change. So I probably got the study a little bit wrong, but it's really interesting. It's just a great example of how in tune they are with us, and how we can affect their behaviour just purely by our energy. So, like you say, it's so important that we take a bit of responsibility too, and also that we're fair to ourselves, in that if you have got a confidence issue, or you've got fear because of something bad that has happened, and it might not be that it's that, you might tell yourself, well, I shouldn't feel like that because it really wasn't that bad, and you might dismiss it, but it's irrelevant. Like, it's in your mind, and it is justifiable, and your brain is telling you it to keep you safe, and it's telling you it for a reason. So you won't, by shutting it down, you're not going to help yourself work your way through it. What you can do is acknowledge it and be nice to yourself about it, and then not push past that point, because you wouldn't push your horse, or I hope you wouldn't push your horse past a threshold where they were saying, hey, I'm not sure if I can cope with this. I'm really feeling a bit nervous and a bit unconfident. But yet we do it to ourselves all the time. So what I do a lot with riders is, we have it a lot with restarts where people don't want to get back on their horses after the horse has been through the restart. The horse is okay. We've worked through any behavioural challenges. Sometimes there's discomfort associated with the behaviour. We'll work through that. Then it comes time where they've seen me ride, they've seen the horse is okay, but they need to get back on. And so, rightly so, there's all this adrenaline and all this fear and all this worry attached to getting back on the horse. And so we just go, you only are going to get on to whatever step of the mountain block or whatever place you get to. It might even be at the mountain block, but it might be just putting that foot up on that first step. And if that's the point where your brain goes, oh my God, I'm not going to be okay, this is going to happen, and you start doing the whole story that might happen in your mind, then you stay at that point and you talk through the story, and then you wait and you breathe and you just be there, and you don't go past the next stage. And then you get down, and then you go again. And then sooner or later, and there might be some other additional mindset work that you need to do. And, there's loads of amazing things that you can do to work through that fear. But sooner or later, what often happens is you start to stop telling the story and start feeling in the moment and want to get to that next step. And then the next step happens and you don't go past it. And so that's something that I really try and get people to do with their horses. If people have got a problem hacking, or they've got a route that's sort of their nemesis, that you just build up slowly to that, and you stop on a successful point and you go, okay, I'm going to come back on that. And it doesn't mean that just because you didn't do that whole loop, or you didn't canter there, or you didn't do that, it's not a failure. It's just there's lots of steps, and you're doing one of however many steps that it might take to get to that end goal. It's about looking at it and reframing it so it can be, you can end on that sort of high note of success for you and for your horse, so you both feel like winners when you get out of the saddle. And then you move on.
That's so interesting. And I love that step-by-step notion, because I think there's so much pressure within the equestrian sphere, even if only from our yard mates or our equestrian friends, who are all doing, bigger and better things, it always seems, at the time than us. But actually just doing what feels good for us and for our horses, and trying to block out that sort of noise from everyone else saying we shoulda, woulda, coulda been doing X, Y, or Z. I mean, it's so interesting how much is mindset as well. You saying about they're picking up from us, which we all feel, don't we, when we're nervous in a situation, or we might be sort of apprehensive. Sometimes I think we need the calmers, not the horses. And it would calm the whole situation down if it was us taking the calmer.
And what else works is, I suppose, giving yourself permission to only go as far as a certain point, and that might be getting off. It's not a problem for me for people to get off. It's really important to get off. If the time that I would get off a horse is where I don't feel like I'm going to be able to help them as well from the tack. I had a horse in training a few years ago. He was a really difficult horse, very explosive horse, hadn't done a lot of hacking, but his owner wanted him to be able to hack. And he had a really good way of he was very athletic, and he moved his body very fast. He was 17 hands, a warm blood, so he's a pretty big sized horse. And when we started the program to get him back hacking, I had a 15-minute loop that I'd worked up to in arena expansion. So I'd gone from my arena to my safe field, to then around the property, to then we were out on this loop. And I got off that horse 17 times in that 15-minute hack. The hack took me 2 3/4 hours to do, and he came back far more relaxed than he left. And then the next day, I got off 12 times. And the next day, I got off like 7 times. The next day, I got off 4. The next time, didn't have to get off again. He was calm, he was relaxed, he was brave, he was connected. But because I proved to him, hey, buddy, like, I know I can't help you from up here because you're too athletic, and if I come off you, it's not going to help you in confidence. I'm not trying to prove anything to anyone by staying on a athletic horse. I want to be able to help the horses in the best way that I can. So if that's from on the floor, because he had the strategies by doing the groundwork that we'd done, I got off, I helped him get calm and relaxed, got back on again, and then we went on our ride. And obviously you have to be able to get on from different logs and things like that, and that's a bit of an extreme situation. Most people aren't going to do that, but I think it's really powerful to hear that, no, it's just a process, and it's not a failure to get off, and to say, oh, I've got to this point, that was a really good point for my horse. It might only be 10 minutes from your yard. Who cares? You're doing it for you and for your horse. And if tomorrow's ride is more confident, more relaxed, more connected for you and them, then that's the goal, right?
That's so interesting. It's almost like relearning what's okay and what's acceptable in a training session. It's not giving up to get off the horse. It's actually part of the progress, and it's part of the journey. And I think we all need to hear that as riders and working with horses.
Yeah, I mean, I train horses for a living. I'm a professional rider. I have had 300 people come through this barn this year. We've trained 50 odd horses, and some of them are very, very difficult horses. I am very happy to get off those horses if I think it's going to help them more from the ground. And I wish more people would do it, because it's this weird thing that we have.
Yeah.
And it never ends well anyway. Usually what we do is go, God, I knew I should have got off.
Yes, 100%. When we're in the dirt on the floor, we go, we should have got off. But I think it's ingrained, isn't it, from generations of it being, you must get on, get in the saddle, stay in that saddle, from generations back of horse riders, and sort of come through the ranks. And only now we're learning from people like you that actually it is okay. And I think, Hannah, we'll all be relaying your words in our ears now when we're in the saddle. Yes, get off that horse. Hannah, before you go, just tell us, how do the principles that you apply in hacking sort of actually move over to other equestrian disciplines as well?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I'm glad you asked it. It's really no different, actually, because if you think about it, if you think even back to sort of starting a young horse, you want the young horse to have a perfect all-round foundation. You want them to be able to go forward off your leg, to stop off your seat, to turn off your body, to move out, regardless of whether they're in an arena or in a field or out with another group of horses. And then with that young horse, you also want them to be able to connect to you, and you want them to be able to understand how to relax when they feel tight. So they've got a different strategy when the inevitable, because they are prey animals, they are going to get a little bit on adrenaline sometimes, and they are going to react in the way that their instinct tells them. So there is a piece that we need to teach them how to understand. If we're going to ride them, we need to teach them to understand pressure to some extent, because our leg and our hand on the rein is pressure. So there's a piece of education for any young horse that then transfers to an all-round hacking horse or an eventer, whatever discipline you want your horse to go into. They still need to understand the leg. They still need to understand the rein. And if they understand how to respond to that rather than react to it, then what you can do is use those aids to help them to find relaxation. So for me, I think one of the things that makes people nervous is when they feel like they don't know what to do when things go wrong. And when things go wrong, regardless of whether you're on a hack or in an arena and your horse gets tense, or you're in a show jumping round, your horse gets too strong for the jump, or you're on cross country and the horse starts looking at umbrellas if there's a big crowd, or you're in a dressage ring and they start spooking at the flowers, the horse needs to first of all be okay with the unexpected, like we talked about before, but they also need to understand that they can be helped to find relaxation through their body, and you can do that through your aids. So that for me it's really not, although hacking's a great example, it's really not about hacking. It's just about teaching the horse how to be a well-rounded horse that really understands us and the way that we want to communicate that with them as riders, from the ground first and then into the saddle.
Hannah, for those listening who think, I need a hacking clinic in my life, how can they get in touch with you and get on board?
Come on a hacking clinic. We've got one. It's happening. The next one, we're not doing them in the winter because people can come and hack with me if they want over winter, but most of the time it's the prep work over winter. And then the next hacking camp is happening in March. The 7th to the 10th of March is the next one. There's still spaces. We keep them really small so that it's myself and my partner that teach on the clinics. And we just like to spend loads of time with each individual and each horse. So the maximum number we have on any clinic is 8, and there's 2 instructors at any one time. The horses stay with us at the barn, so riders can get a break from mucking out. And that's the best way. So next hacking camp is in March 7th to the 10th. And you can get in touch with me via social media or via email. So I'm on Instagram and Facebook as Hannah Walton Equestrian, and then the website is hannahwalton.co.uk, I believe. I think they both work.
Well, Hannah, thank you so much for coming on, and we will hear your words and your voice ringing in our ears when we're in the saddle. And I hope that all the listeners, all the listeners who've been tuned into this episode will have that confidence to actually say, I'm not going to listen to my friends or my family saying I need to do this. I will get off my horse if it's the right thing to do.
Prioritise relaxation. Get off if you need to.
Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.